So to take the stage for our final panel of the evening, I would like to invite, please, Gayane Umarova, Chairperson of the Art and Culture Development Foundation of Uzbekistan and newest member of the Aleph Foundation Board. Welcome. Bariza Chiari, Chair of the Aleph Foundation Board. Je vous invite à prendre place, s'il vous plaît. Saya Vergara Jaime, Vice Minister of Heritage and Memories and Culture Governance of Colombia. Welcome. Shatha Safi, Director of RIWAC, Palestine. And Vianney Bass, Mediterranean Basin Operations Director at the Institut Européen de Coopération et de Développement. And moderating the panel this evening is Melissa Gronlund, a writer at the Art newspaper. Thank you very much.
Is this working? Yeah. Well, thank you all for having us, and welcome to the first panel discussion, and maybe also importantly, the last panel discussion of the night before we can get some snacks, of Aleph's 2025 conference, From Crisis to Peace, which is really the hope that we all share in common today. I'm Melissa Gronlund, a journalist who covers cultural heritage and often many of the fantastic projects supported by Aleph. And I'm honored to be with such a stellar panel as we open this conference. The subject is Women, Cultural Heritage, and Peace, and it was inspired by the exhibition that you just saw the short video of, Portraits of Women Beyond the Stones, which I think, if you do it again, could I suggest that you call it cultural matrimony? That's after hearing about cultural patrimony in our last talk, for which Aleph commissioned photographers to take images of women in the project it supports. The question of women and cultural heritage is a loaded one. And I'll say the quiet part out loud here. Women, at least in my experience, are underrepresented in cultural heritage. I cover cultural heritage and I also cover contemporary art, and I never have any trouble getting quotes from women in my art stories. However, when I do a story on cultural heritage, I often notice that the people I have speaking to me or given to me as spokespeople are always men. Now, is this true? This is the question that we're going to delve into in this panel. But it's also something that I think we should all be a little maybe embarrassed of, because in this room we are all obviously people who believe in equality between the sexes. But I'm grateful for the chance to think about it and to delve into what it might mean. How are the practices of cultural preservation and restoration affected by the discipline being male-dominated? What voices go unintentionally unheard? Which sectors might be more affected, the policy level, the implementation level? How do we navigate and fully understand gender roles, which are often not as fixed as we might imagine? And most importantly, what might women be giving us as we journey towards peace that we are ignoring along the way? I'm joined here by 5 figures in the field of cultural heritage, 4 of them women who have achieved high-level positions in government and the cultural field, and our token man, Vianney Bass, who has very gamely agreed to join us. He's stepping into another's shoes, as Medine just said. We will speak for about 45 minutes, and then we will go have a chance to see the exhibition. Gayane, I'm going to start with you. Recently, Uzbekistan has committed to a huge increase in cultural investment, with the new Contemporary Art Center in Tashkent, the Bukhara Biennial, the creation of a pedestrianized art center in Bukhara, and increased investment into traditional craft skills. As your role becomes more international, have you found that women are indeed the minority at leadership level? And how does this differ to what you see in Uzbekistan?
Thank you so much for the invitation to this panel, and especially to Bariza and Valerie. And it's really an honor to be here amongst these distinguished guests and panelists today. Well, addressing your question, I should say that in Uzbekistan, the situation is shifting quite rapidly. And thanks to what exactly you have said, we're trying to really engage in culture as much as possible. And of course, we try to put women as the leaders of these new initiatives in the country. And especially because we have a strategy in the country by 2030 to achieve the gender equality, which is quite important also for the higher government in our country, but also for the people, because we're a very young nation. There is 60% of the population below 30, which really kind of shaping this narrative that girls and women eventually has to be really present in this new changing world, especially in Uzbekistan. So as a cultural institution, we try to really support the initiatives of our president and create more and more of activities and projects for the women to be engaged in. And it also lies, in, I think, in the general strategy of the world that is changing. As I work more with international institutions like ALIPH, UNESCO, UN, especially in Geneva, I can see more women being role models. And personally, for myself, I have Irina Bokova as my role model for several years, and I think, especially in Uzbekistan, it's important to have a role models as a women, so other girls can really stand up to them. So I can see that the situation is changing, and I'm really delighted to see Uzbekistan one of the champion countries to support this. Thank you.
That's incredible to hear about the push towards gender equality being influenced or instituted at the leadership level.
Well, especially because the second, important person in the country is the senator. She's a woman, So there is two special people in the country, two main people, and one is a man and the other woman. So it's basically a duality,
Well, I think that's a good way to transition over to you, Bariza. Je vais poser des questions en anglais, ça va? You've held influential roles in both politics and civil society. You've been a senator for France. You've been part of the French delegation to NATO. How have you navigated these situations that are often male-dominated in your position as a leader?
Alors, merci d'abord pour cette question. Je pense que d'abord, l'égalité est toujours un combat. C'est une parole de François Mitterrand et je pense que c'est toujours un combat jusqu'à maintenant et nous ne sommes pas encore arrivés au bout. Bien sûr, maintenant, il y a énormément de femmes qui sont dans des organisations nationales ou internationales. Nous avons vu tout à l'heure le nombre de femmes qui se sont succédées, toutes aussi brillantes les unes que les autres. Donc ça, c'est réconfortant. Et comment on arrive dans un monde politique, puisque moi c'était le monde politique, comment on arrive à se faire sa place? C'était compliqué parce que d'abord, je suis une femme et je suis une femme qu'on va appeler d'une des composantes de la nation française. Je ne suis pas française d'origine, je suis ce qu'on appelle un immigré, voilà. Donc, j'avais une double difficulté, et en plus musulmane, une triple difficulté. Et comment on arrive à faire sa place dans ce monde d'hommes? Je pense qu'il y a une chose qui est essentielle, c'est la compétence. Quand vous mettez sur la table des compétences, on oublie votre appartenance. On oublie qui vous êtes, que vous êtes une femme de couleur, que vous êtes une femme de telle ou telle origine. Donc, je pense que la première des choses, c'est les compétences. Et pour ces compétences, il nous faut travailler 2 fois ou 3 fois plus. Et je pense que toutes les femmes peuvent se reconnaître dans ce que je dis. Mais une fois que les compétences ont été admises, que le respect est là, vous pouvez continuer votre chemin et aller le plus loin possible, et il n'y a que le ciel qui peut vous arrêter. Et donc, pour moi, c'est important de dire que d'abord, c'est toujours un combat et qu'il faut continuer ce combat pour l'égalité, les hommes comme les femmes. Je pense que dans le tumulte du monde actuel, qui est dirigé par les hommes, on peut constater qu'il y a un échec patent, puisqu'il y a des guerres partout, puisque tout le monde peut reconnaître qu'il y a des difficultés et que les hommes n'ont pas pu maîtriser toutes ces difficultés. Alors, est-ce que pour autant, c'est le temps des femmes. Je ne suis pas certaine que si les femmes étaient à la place des hommes, ça serait mieux. Je ne suis pas certaine de ça. Pas du tout certaine de ça. Parce que nous avons dans l'histoire des exemples historiques qui nous disent le contraire. Donc, je pense qu'il faut davantage de femmes dans les organisations, au niveau local, au niveau national comme au niveau international, et que nous devons avoir notre place, notre parole dans comment dire, dans ce qui se passe dans le monde. Et nous n'avons pas notre parole dans ce qui se passe dans le monde. Nous ne l'avons pas. Nous sommes la moitié du monde et donc nous n'avons pas cette parole. Et donc, je ne pense pas que ça serait mieux, mais comme nous sommes différentes, nous pourrions peut-être apporter, et comme nous sommes porteuses de la vie, nous aurions peut-être des choses à dire aux hommes qui nous dirigent pour, pour quelque chose de plus doux, de plus humain. Et je pense que nous avons ce rôle-là à jouer, et c'est en ce sens que ça peut être le temps des femmes pour apporter cette dose d'humanité, de spiritualité aussi qui nous manque beaucoup dans le monde actuel. Donc je mets les compétences et je dis que ce n'est pas parce que les femmes occuperaient les fonctions des hommes actuellement que ça serait mieux, mais ça serait différent.
I think you touched on so many important points, which are really also part of the difficulty of this panel discussion. Thank you very much, Aleph. Because, you know, what is a woman? And it is true, it's a bit of a cliche that if a woman was in charge, everyone would be, you know, soft and painting unicorns. But at the same time, women are different, you know, and all women are different, but there are generalizations that we can make and then back away from and then make and then back away from. And I think I almost hear in your voice that kind of push and pull that I think we all instinctively feel and repel at the same time. But competence, yes. I mean, that is the thing to go for, whether you're a man or a woman. I think as an American, I feel that quite strongly. Saya, can I go to you? Because one of the great things about this panel is that we are so global, and you are coming from Colombia in Latin America. And I want to get, you know, as a framing start, your impression of the role of women in cultural heritage, but also how it might have changed over the past 20 years or so.
Thank you. Thank you. Do you hear me? Yes. Well, first of all, I would like to give special thanks to Aleph Foundation, of course, all the employees, the Geneva authorities, and Ambassador Echeverri and team. Second, I would love to distinguish between two kinds of women, rural and urban women, because it's not the same. Rural and ethnic women are the guardians of memories, the heritage, the knowledge. I think about cooks, weavers, midwives, makers of ancestral beverages, healers. Yeah, they used to live in contexts full of violence and exclusion. It's not the same as urban women. They have the opportunity to go to the university, to work at the institutions such as the Ministry of Culture. But when they work together, I think everything starts to change, because rural women get more visible and empowered. Rural women are the core of what we do, the core of cultural policies, at least in Colombia, in the left-wing governments. We have the first one in history, by the way. You have to excuse me, it's like 20 years since the last time I spoke English, so you have to forgive me for the mistakes. Well, it's first of all, I would love to do that, to put that in the table. Inside of the Ministry of Culture, 20 years ago, in fact, men were deciding on cultural policies and implementing them. 20 years ago, there were no much women, but now, in the last 20 years, we have had more women as ministers. Right now, 5 out of 6 directors are women, particularly in the Directorate of Heritage and Memory. We have had many women. 70 to 60% of the employees are women. We have wage parity, and we have recognition, and women are more decision makers. We have also created in this government the Gender Collective that seeks to promote inside of the institution, but also outside programs to promote gender equality. That is a very valuable thing because that didn't exist before. We have also created the National Plan of Culture with most of 100,000 of participants, and it has a gender perspective, the National Plan of Culture. And the last thing that I can tell, that I have many examples. The last one is, we have a program called Escuelas Taller de Colombia. The translation would be like Workshop Schools of Colombia. And we have received, in the past 2 years, a donation from the Spanish Cooperation to promote gender equality through economic independence, because this is a very important subject and aspect for women to graduate the program. So yes, it has changed, but we have to keep on working very hard and invest more energy and economic resources to make more profound and permanent changes inside of the institution, but also outside.
Well, your Spanish was muy bien.
Gracias.
Almost as good, as good as mine.
Thank you very much.
I wanted to pick up on that distinction that you made between rural and urban women, because I think, again, that speaks to this idea of a multiplicity of women rather than women as one uniform entity. But also, we've been speaking a little bit about the political level, leadership level of women, but also in terms of the implementation level and women on the ground. And Shatha, I wanted to get you on that, because one of the amazing things about REWALK is that it uses memory as a tool of resistance. It's not just about archaeological architectural typologies, but it's also about using that memory to fight for the Palestinian people. And women are often seen as the bearers of cultural memory. The women often do crafts. Women are the guardians of intangible cultural heritage. Is that something that is a cliche, or have you found that is accurate? And how have you, worked with that gender fact in your projects?
Thank you. It's working. So thank you for having us. Thank you, Valerie, and the team of Aleph, the very great team of Aleph, for insisting on having us and having our voices loud to talk more about our struggle and causes, and also for acknowledging women. You can't imagine the amount of joy seeing the portraits as people working on struggle, on geopolitical pressures, and being acknowledged in any single way. So thank you. So I'm glad to be here, and I'm glad to also to speak on behalf of the Palestinian women. Palestinian women have always have a key role in shaping the Palestinian history, archaeology, identity, and culture. They have been working within agriculture, involved in agricultural firms, in crafts, and also in building historic centers and historic buildings hand by hand with the men, as well as being part of the political actions and pressure and within the Palestinian cause. And they continue to use traditional crafts and heritage in socioeconomic development. So we see how we can use heritage as a pillar for continuation and for the development of heritage, not as a cliche or as a museum item or a static item, but also for the future. Especially when we're talking about resistance and resilience in the context of Palestinian and fragmentation. The story about REWALK was really inspiring because it was founded by a female architect and writer, Suad Al-Amiri. which is also a refugee. She couldn't come to Palestine for her youth and a period of her lifetime, and she could only imagine her home country, Palestine, through the narration of her grandfather and her father. So her only way to come, when she had the chance to come to Palestine, it became with the obsession of documentation. So she started a program of documenting cultural heritage and historic buildings in Palestine. And this set the base for what we do now. Having the database of 50,320 historic buildings within the West Bank, Jerusalem and Gaza set the base for what we continue to work now. We also inspired by the oral history and the narration and the story behind the stones by women and what they do and what heritage means to their present, future, and past, to create safe and inclusive spaces for women and for female actors, like the one we restored in Beit El, which acted like an inclusive space for women to act and continue to work. Today we're in a very critical place. We can't stop but acknowledge how the massive pressure on women, rather than focusing on their career path or purchasing their dream life or whatever they dream of, or transferring cultural heritage to future generations, they're also put in a very critical situation where they have to deal with daily pressure, especially in Gaza, looking for shelter and for food and for mobility. So it's a massive pressure on women that we have to acknowledge. And cultural heritage can also be play a key role in the place of recovery towards the process of our cause.
Yeah, I think that's such a good point. That was something that really came out in the speeches, the way that cultural heritage is a path towards peace, and not just in some kind of bromide way, but in terms of bringing people together, giving people jobs, engaging youth, passing on culture. Just when you were talking about how Riwaq is working with women to hear their stories, was that because women are traditionally the bearers of the stories in Palestinian society, or was it because there was a sense that women had gone unheard and you wanted to redress that balance? Is it because women are the bearers of the stories, or was it because you felt that women had been ignored or neglected and you wanted to redress that?
It's a bit of both. It's also the same as the case of oppression and the need to lower to increase or have a louder voice for women, as not only the real actor of cultural heritage formation, but also what's the future of cultural heritage and what's the future of Palestinian women and what's the future of Palestinian geopolitics and part of the decision-making processes. This was one of the essential parts, but also because of the richness of knowledge that women had that we need to tackle and look at. I remember we had an exhibition for a storyteller looking only on women narrations, collecting women narrations, because there was always a chance for males to speak out and to tell the story and to write history. But females, their voices were the ones that we need to look at, that go in details into the houses, into the crafts, into the cuisines, in the embroidery, and go into the essence of the Palestinian identity, but we don't hear it very often.
And women have access to different spaces, to different kinds of stories. Vianney, I'm going to finish with you. As director you were in Beirut for 6 years, and you worked with a really interesting project with IECD, which IECD, I don't know if you know it, but it often works in job creation programs. So it's a really fantastic organization in that way. And your job creation program was to put women in the construction industry and teaching them how to bend and cut rebar. I'm not even sure I know what rebar is, and how to pour and mold concrete. Can you tell us a little bit about that experience of, a really stereotypically male discipline, and why you, or how it was training women also in that very physically demanding work.
Thank you so much, Melissa. I'm very proud to have been selected as part of the active minority, as part of this high-level panel of women. It's not so easy to be the last one to talk as well, especially because there have been a lot of interesting stuff that's been said since the beginning of this conference, and also because there is a cocktail afterwards, and we know that it's absolutely necessary to be on time for a cocktail. A few words about what we've been doing in terms of on-site training which is some kind of project that we put in place after the blast, the enfijade in the port of Beirut in 2020. And we put in place some Chantier École Patrimoine on-site training for heritage and renovation project with the great support of Direction Générale des Antiquités et son formidable directeur qui est là. Et bien sûr, grâce au soutien de la Fondation Alif sur deux projets. We currently have got one project ongoing in the northern part of Lebanon, in Tripoli, in Trablus, which is the renovation of a hammam from the 14th century, Mamluk era, where we expect to have around 30% of women working on that. On-site training with women is not easy, absolutely, as you mentioned. It doesn't come easy. And one of the things we have to face is first the reluctance of the women themselves to join an on-site training where a lot of the people working are men, and it's not in the cultural habits to be working on those places. So we have to go talk to them, make sure they're convinced that it's a great thing for them to join the project, and also talk to their family, sometimes the father, the husband, the older son, to make sure that they are convinced that their honor, there will be respect for them when on site. And then we put in place some hard skills training, obviously, and also some soft skills training, where we make it normal for everyone working on the project that there are women over there. And then once they have been selected, actually things go pretty smoothly until the success of the project. If we look at the impact, we started 4 years ago, maybe only 10-15% of women working on those projects. And now, as I mentioned earlier, we are close to 30%, with a placement rate after the project of over 50% for women working in the construction industry, and an additional maybe 20 or 30% of them working in different industries, nothing to do with the heritage or construction industry, yet the training or the confidence that they've gained through the training make sure that they are able to reach out to other and different kind of work. Peut-être un dernier point, si je peux, en français, c'est moi ce qui m'a beaucoup touché sur ces projets, et ce que j'ai vu, ce que j'ai appris, c'est en fait la complémentarité entre la reconstruction du bâtiment et la reconstruction personnelle et humaine des bénéficiaires. Une sorte de symbiose qui se fait entre des gens. C'est vrai que la plupart des gens que nous recrutons sont des gens en situation de difficulté, soit du fait de la guerre civile, ses conséquences, soit du fait de la crise, soit du fait de conflits communautaires, comme il peut notamment y en avoir dans la ville de Tripoli. Et au même moment où ils apprennent quelque chose, ils se reconstruisent professionnellement, ils contribuent à la rénovation du bien. Et cette complémentarité, cette symbiose, en fait, est le meilleur moyen, je crois, d'assurer la pérennité du bâtiment et de l'inscrire dans le futur, puisque d'une certaine façon, ce bâtiment devient adopté par sa communauté et par les gens qui vivent autour. Et je ne compte plus le nombre de fois où les gens que nous formions m'ont dit qu'ils étaient passés à côté de ce bâtiment pendant des années sans jamais le remarquer, ou même en le traitant comme un site de décharge publique. Et donc, ils le découvrent, ils l'adoptent, ils le rénovent et ils le protègent. Je crois que c'est la meilleure façon d'assurer sa pérennité pour le futur. Donc, many thanks again for your question. I hope sorry I didn't go to the point immediately. But,
you're so bilingual. You can't stop yourself. No, but I think that's a very good point. You gave them a stake in the city. They gave them a stake in their, in their culture, in a physical way. How come you asked the women to join the construction industry? Was it because that was the major employment sector at the time, or was it because you wanted to challenge them, or you just needed the help?
The main reason really was to challenge and also to make sure that, and we do this in any kind of training, that we have some balance, more or less, some gender balance. Okay, obviously, if we do project in the health sector, we'll have a majority of women, and we'll try to find male who want to go through some nursing courses. But in the renovation industry, we try to find ladies. Some of them will be working, I would say, in not in relatively obvious kind of sectors, such as painting, such as menuiserie, but others will be working in limestone, la chaux, which is very tough kind of training, and even some of them in iron, ferronnerie, or other kind of more tough kind of training. So it's a willingness to do that, but some of them actually, once on site, really are getting interested in some kind of sectors and move into that, and we try to make sure it's something that becomes totally normal.
I mean, the converse of bringing women into an industry that's traditionally male-dominated is the idea also of bringing men into industries that are, particularly female-dominated. And I think that, in the discussion or the rhetoric over advancing women, it is true that, we have to think about, well, are men displaced, or, are they being allowed socially to go into, more softer roles? And I think that's, I come up again to Metin's great comment of putting yourself in someone else's shoes constantly. Guyana, in this movement towards 50-50 workplace representation, do you have any situations where you have men being trained in roles, particularly those, of traditional skills that were the province of women?
Well, I have to say that the field of restoration, it's from Soviet Union, it used to be more women engaged. So now it's actually shifting, and we have much more male working on restoration of the buildings, of the cultural heritage as fine arts, etc., and objects. So for us, it's kind of the other way around. We're trying to make sure that it's equal from both sides.
And skills like embroidery.
Well, embroidery, again, it from our culture and also Islamic traditions, it used to be that women are not allowed to embroider in gold. And so it was mainly predominant. And now they do both. And women were more engaged in Suzani, which is embroidery, but of just traditional threads, silk threads mainly. So again, it's kind of, it doubles up, yeah.
And is that, as you're, I know you're doing that fantastic, while Al-Awar is doing that fantastic pedestrianized city center. Are you thinking of recapturing, I guess the Bukhara traditions as they once were, or are you trying to bring them into some kind of new modernity?
Well, the general idea of the Bukhara Biennials was a duality of craftsmanship and contemporary art. So it was very important for us to elevate the contemporary, the craft in Uzbekistan, and to turn it into the design, because at a certain point we felt that the national craft is really in danger, because the production became cheaper and cheaper, and it more was attractive for tourists, and we was kind of losing the importance of applied art, the main key points of it. So for us, it was important also to preserve it, and in a way, Bukhara Biennials really helps it to preserve it, to elevate the craftsmanship, and to create new jobs also in this field.
Yeah, that's another binary that we won't have time to, but the difference between craft and design. Shweta, can I speak to you, pick up on that question with you, because I think that's a lovely point about it's not just craft, but it's all stories, and it's a whole lexicon, and it's ideas and traditions that go with it. How are you working to preserve those in Riwaq at this time, and also how are you operating more generally?
Yes, I think the key issue is the not separating tangible and intangible. Like, you always have to deal with the stone and its story, with the craft and its people, with the craft and its know-how or knowledge. And this comprehensive approach that we're working on would lead us into multiple layers of knowledge production and transformation and reaching out to distribution of knowledge, but also working on crafts and the future of crafts and their research documentation, as well as the rehabilitation and the planning process of it. And all of this would work if cultural heritage is really perceived as a pillar for socioeconomic development and is having a well thought of policies and way of protection that involves not only the NGOs like RIWAQ is working and other partners, but also the governmental bodies, the local communities as main guardians and holders of cultural heritage. You asked also about how we're operating.
How is it right now?
How is it? I think if we're talking about the situation in general, because of what's happening in Gaza, there's also the multi-layers of what we call the silent side of what's happening also in the West Bank. So in the West Bank, we're really challenged by the fragmentation. We're having illegal Israeli settlements all around us, which come also with multi-layers of bypass roads, checkpoints, and obstacles on mobility. So for the past 1.5 years, we also have been extremely challenged about our mobility. We can't reach the majority of the sites, or if we want to reach them, you have to go through one path, through one road or the other. There's a number of around 800 movement obstacle that is put in the West Bank, including East Jerusalem, the West Bank area, and H2, the Hebron area, which makes it very hard to function. There's also the massive, also I can call it silent because nobody is knowing enough about it, that is happening, the destruction of refugee camps in the West Bank. So around 200 houses within the refugee camps of Tulkarem and Jenin are being demolished. And there's also the displacement of their people from the refugees to other places. So it's a complex situation that is leading to uncertainty, a high level of uncertainty. We don't know what's next. We don't know what's the future of the West Bank, if it's going to end in Gaza, if it's going to expand. So this level of uncertainty is really putting enormous pressure not only on us as Palestinians, but also on cultural heritage that is not being treated as priority. So the twist here is that we're using cultural heritage as a pillar for creating jobs for people in Gaza, for them to live, to rescue sites that will be demolished if we have the plans later on, quick plans to rebuild Gaza when the war ends. So this is how we're dealing with cultural heritage. We still believe that cultural heritage is the core of Palestinian identity and cause, but you have to deal with it in different ways.
That's great. Thank you so much. I mean, I think I'm going to, Desiree, give you the last word. I'll give you the parole. As chair of the Aleph Foundation Board, I mean, I think everything that we've been speaking about, the importance of cultural heritage as a means of preserving identity, cultural heritage as a path to peace, you know, it just underlines the importance of the work that everyone in this room is doing, and you know, we should really all feel quite smug and good about ourselves for, you know, working hard in this field. And I just wanted to give you the kind of the last word about what you see as your priorities for Aleph going forward.
Alors, volontiers. Je dois vous dire que depuis que je m'occupe d'Alif, enfin du patrimoine, j'ai beaucoup plus de satisfaction que quand je faisais de la politique. Parce que quand on fait de la politique, même si on travaille, même si on prend des décisions, on ne voit pas le résultat de ce que nous avons fait. Avec Alif, nous sommes agiles, nous délivrons et nous voyons les résultats. Et donc ça, c'est extrêmement important, extrêmement satisfaisant. Et vraiment, je suis très heureuse dans cette fonction, vraiment très heureuse. Mais je voulais rebondir sur ce qui s'est dit. Et ce qui est dit par notre amie colombienne et notre amie palestinienne, de faire la différence entre les femmes des villes et les femmes du milieu rural, c'est extrêmement important et ça nous relie à la conversation que M. Reynolds a eue tout à l'heure avec cet écrivain qui parlait de la culture et de la métamorphose de la culture vers la civilisation. Et quand on voit les besoins des femmes dans le milieu rural, et dans ce que vous dites et ce que vous racontez, le fait de passer de la femme citadine qui passe de la culture à la métamorphose de la civilisation, nous devenons gardiennes de nos sœurs. Et ça, c'est extrêmement important. Vous nous faites toucher du doigt cette importance, c'est très important. Et si, je voulais conclure par, si moi j'ai bénéficié du travail des pionnières en matière d'égalité, des femmes qui se sont bagarrées pour le droit de vote, des femmes qui se sont bagarrées pour la parité en politique, nous sommes maintenant les générations, tous seuls qui sont ici, dont Gaïané, nous devons être des modèles, des rôles modèles pour ceux qui vont venir. Nous sommes aussi quelque part des pionnières et nous devons garder cette image de pionnière par ce que nous faisons, ce que nous montrons. En fait, garder une forme d'éthique dans ce que nous faisons pour donner envie à des jeunes, à la jeune génération, qui parfois, en termes d'efforts, ça n'est pas du tout la même chose que nous. Bon. Et c'est une réalité. Ça n'est pas du tout la même chose que nous. Nous avons énormément travaillé et les jeunes générations pensent que tout est là et qu'il n'y a plus d'efforts à faire, alors qu'il y a encore des efforts à faire en matière d'égalité. Et donc, dans ce sens, relier la culture à la métamorphose de la civilisation, ce qui a été dit tout à l'heure était extrêmement important pour nous faire sentir la différence. Être gardienne de nos sœurs dans le milieu rural, en Colombie, comme en Palestine, peut-être même en France ou en Suisse, et être ces gardiennes-là, pour nous, c'est vraiment une mission. Et Alif a cette mission.
Thank you very much. Well, thank you so much to the great panelists.